Let's do this. Welcome to the November 24 market update. We're talking about the latest numbers from the Milwaukee market here. And special topic for today, reducing and managing tenant turnover. So before we get there, let's take a quick look at the latest numbers straight out of the MLS here, in this case from October. Inventory is up quite a bit, over 4,000 units. If you look below, I have some historic numbers to give it some context. So you can see inventory is still kind of low, but it's also a lot better to what we have seen for the last 2 or 3 years. Oftentimes we were just around 2,000, so it's basically twice the inventory right now. If you're buying investor or as a residential home buyer, this is much more selection, much more to choose from. We're up 27% from last year, and we're very happy that we have more inventory. In terms of closed units, we're still down, very compressed market. So only about 1,900 units have closed. So not too many transactions in the market. That's a trend we have seen throughout the entire year. This year, days on market is slowing down. So we're seeing a slower velocity than we had in spring and summer, also slower than it was last year around this time. Last year we had 8 days, now we're at 10 days on market, but we still see some listings that are going pretty fast. And with that, the median sold price is now $337,000. That is up 12% from October last year. I would take this with a huge grain of salt. I don't think we're going to end the year with a plus 12%. I think it's going to be 7.5%, 8% median increase in sales price or appreciation, basically. The 12%, I think that is really an outlier that we have seen in October. What are some of the market trends? As you know, we had new NAR MLS rules pertaining to commission, how real estate agents get paid. There was some discussion early in spring. You've seen it in the media, if home prices will be going down, if agents' commissions are dropping. None of that has really happened. The procedure is basically the same. 99.9% of the sellers are still paying for the buyer's agent. So, the paperwork looks a little differently, but other than that, we haven't really seen much changes. We're still seeing multiple offers at this time in the market. Some areas are still hot. For example, Bayview, to some extent also Wauwatosa, some of the North Shore markets, and also in West Allis. We've participated, my team has participated some market this weekend that went still competitively. Listing supply is slowing down ahead of Thanksgiving. That's very normal for this time of the year. We anticipated that. We see this every year. So if you have a choice, you're not going to list your house after mid-November or into December, where the market is switching over into holiday season mode. And so there's not too much new supply coming on the market. We still have a little left over, but that is increasingly looking picked over, and it's just stuff that didn't sell last summer. Home prices are now more negotiable than most of 2024. As an investor, the end of the year has always been my favorite time to buy a property. So it is also this year. I'm under contract on 2 properties right now. And even though I'm paying more than I want to, it's still better than what I would have done in spring. And also, home inspections are back. In spring, we analyzed about 450 deals. I think that was back in May. And 52% of those had no home inspection included. And that's just offers made in general. So good to see that home inspections are back, and you can negotiate a little bit more also on the contingencies. It's not only price, it's also that stuff. And of course, that gives you a second opportunity to go back to the seller and negotiate a few things. What's going on with inventory? Let's take a look here at this chart. The blue line is total inventory. Let me see if I can get my laser pointer going here. So this is total inventory, and we're way up. Last year, we hit a low of around a little under 2,000 actually. So now we're over 4,000, so more than doubled. And this is not a short-lived trend. We have seen this developing for several months now. And we will probably see another incline once we have the November numbers here in a little while. And the reason I'm saying this, because the red line here, this is new inventory that's coming on the market additionally every month. So the blue line is total inventory, and the red line is what's coming on the market this month. This has been relatively stable for the second half of the year, and we have a good amount of supply, certainly a lot more than what we have started the year with. In terms of what I expect in the next few months is, yeah, December will slow down, of course, with new listings, but I think we're going to see generally this trend carrying forward also into the spring market, which means a little bit more inventory. We will still be very much in a seller's market, but a little bit more inventory than what we have seen in the last 2 or 3 years. In terms of competitiveness, a really good metric to pay attention to is the sold to list price ratio. If you're not familiar with this basically is telling you how much over or under list price people are paying on average for their houses after the deal has been negotiated and closed. So historically, let's say 5 years back, 10 years back, that ratio used to be around 95, 96%. So on average, people would negotiate a 4 or 5 or 6% discount. The last 3, 4 years since COVID, we've basically been in over 100% territory during the spring and summer market. This year was no different. We hit a peak here of over 102%. And as expected, and with the seasonality, we are down. October number was just at 100.0%.
Gee, Buzz, what's up?
Karen, can you mute Dave,
Yep,
please?
got
Oh,
him.
all right, so we're at 100%. I think the next months we will see this coming down even further for December and January, just like we did last year. So this will probably most likely what's going to happen in the next few months. So if you're looking for an investment property, right now is probably the best time to negotiate that we had in 2024. All right, this is just the first couple slides from my monthly market update. If you want to see the full one, it's about 20 slides that talk about the economy, what's going on in the Milwaukee real estate market. You can find it on my YouTube channel. And with that, we're getting to the topic of today, which is managing and reducing tenant turnover. So I want to start out with setting the base here a little bit that when you're looking at a turnover from a financial point of view, that is really your single biggest expense as an investor. It's when you look at all the other things that you have, repairs here, whatever. It's turnover is a huge portion on your cost column in your P&L. And when you look at it from optimizing your business, optimizing your net operating income, you basically have three ways of increasing your NOI. The first one, obviously, is you can raise rents. The second one is you can reduce operating expenses. Most people are much better in reducing operating expenses than they are in increasing rent. So the first item here is usually a low-hanging fruit, low-hanging opportunity. Reducing operating expenses, from what I talk to investors, most of them are pretty good with that. Maybe even be too good at that, not spending enough on making the properties better. But the third the third opportunity you have is reducing turnover. And that is oftentimes underestimated because you have a hard cost and a soft cost component to that. But when you look at what your total turnover cost is, we estimate that for our portfolio, our average turnover cost is about $6,000. So if you have 10 or 20 turnovers, 10 turnovers would be about $60,000. So that is kind of, you can hire a person to reduce turnover at that point if it would save you 10 turnovers every year. So it is really something to look into, and that's what we want to do today. There are two categories. There are reasons why people are moving that you can control, and there are reasons that you cannot control. Let's take a look at these ones first. Flexibility is basically the reason why people rent. We do a lot of relocation business, so people are moving to Milwaukee. They want to rent here for a year before they get to know Milwaukee and are ready to buy a home. So, that you cannot do anything about that. They end up buying a house. Sometimes they're changing a job, and that happens quickly. They need some time to sell their house, buy a new one. It's a long commute, so they're renting for the time in between. They need more space or they need less space, maybe because they had a change in family status. They have 5 kids now, so they really need a bigger place. Maybe they're not getting along with the neighbors. So those are all things that you cannot control as a landlord. So, no point in worrying about it. But there are a lot of things that you can control. And when you look at really what's happening, tenants don't like moving. It's hugely disruptive to their life, and it's also very expensive. When you look at everything that, moving all the stuff to, maybe you have to buy a few new things for the new place, etc. It just adds up really quick. And so tenants inherently do not like to move, but many of them are still moving anyways. I tried to find some statistics and I found some from the National Apartment Associations. They did a survey early this year, and their members said they had an average retention rate of 59%, which means that 41% of their tenants moved every year, which I think is a terribly low number. We just crunched the numbers this morning, and we were at just under 86% retention rate. So we had a few turnovers this year, but it wasn't terribly bad. We're really making an effort in that category, and it really shows. And the reasons why people moved in our case had it was always beyond our control. It was something that they just moved to Chicago or something of that nature. The number one reason, and you can see this on the chart on the left side, why people are moving is bad customer service. So, that is really a statistic to dwell on a little bit and let that sink in. So, for the most part, you are actually in charge of why people are moving. That's 68%. The second biggest category is dissatisfaction with the unit, that you can control that to some extent. Then you have competitive reasons, for example, price. Yeah, you have a little control there. Um, and the other things are relatively small. But bad customer service is really the biggest piece here. And when you dig into it, you find out that the property manager or the landlord were completely unresponsive. It just boils down to poor communication. Repairs were not done or done very late. It takes weeks for somebody to show up. And when they're showing up, then the repairs are not done the correct way, or it's just really hassle, or needed upgrades are not done. So all of these categories fall really under bad customer service. The good news is there's a lot that we can do in that category. And I think, especially this time of the year, as the season is coming to an end, I think it's a good time to sit down and say, all right, what's the plan for 2025? What do we want to do? My wife and I actually, go every year on a vacation specifically for that purpose, where we just sit on the beach and talk about, what we want to do in the next year without the distractions of a daily life. And one of the things you can do or you can talk about is creating a tenant retention plan. And I do have some ideas for you what you can do. For example, I'm a big believer in doing an annual property inspection. We have a guy who's doing that for us. He goes to all the properties, schedules the appointment, and then we supply him with the checklist, and he goes through everything inside and outside. We know where the typical spots are to look and what we want to check. But there's also a portion on there to speak to the tenant and see if what they have
What's your call?
to complain. Karen, can you please mute
Yes.
Eric? So I'm a big fan in an annual inspection. Some people say you should do it twice a year. I would say it really depends on the demographics that you're renting to. We're renting single family homes in the suburbs, so usually once a year for us is enough. But you might be in a type of property where twice a year or even quarterly might be a better idea. Doing a tenant survey, understanding their current level of satisfaction, actually not a bad idea to reach out to tenants and talk to them a little bit. We do it as part of that inspection to just see what complaints they have and what issues there might be. Simple question: is there anything that you're aware of that's broken in the property that needs attention? Improving communication, you can send out an email, for example, twice a year, and just ask people how they're doing, if they need anything, and see what the response is. Improve request response time. So this comes down to repair requests. Obviously there are different levels of urgency. Not everything deserves immediate attention. So if it's January and the furnace goes out, that's a completely different level of urgency than if somebody calls in the middle of summer and says the blind in the third bedroom doesn't function very well. That's obviously a lot lower on the urgency scale. Improve repair quality. I think this should go without saying, but talking to people, that is obviously an issue sometimes that repairs are made, but not well. It's cheap quality parts or cheap quality labor, and then you have to do it twice, disturb the tenant twice, bother the tenant twice. So that would be an area to look into to improve. You can look into offering another unit if the needs are not met anymore, if it's too big, too small, if they want something that's more updated. If you were at RPACon 2 years ago, I remember Logan Rankin was talking about this. They do this very, very actively. That if a tenant is indicating that they're looking to move out, they ask them, why do you want to move out? What has changed? Where do you want to move? And maybe we can offer you something that is a better fit for you. Obviously, the larger your portfolio becomes, the more you can take advantage of that. But even in the same building, if you have some smaller and some larger units, you may have an opportunity to shuffle around there and say, hey, in 2 months, we're going to have a vacancy on a bigger unit. If they like the building, there is a convenience in staying. And that also saves you on the turnaround there. You should offering upgrades and updates for tenants that have been with you for a long time. If you're in the fortunate situation that you have a tenant who has been with you for more than 5 years and the carpet was not maybe even brand new when they moved in, maybe it's not a bad idea to just talk to them about what would have to be done. Because the inclination that you will have naturally is to wait until the tenant is moving out to replace the carpet, but it might be a good idea to reach out to them and say, hey, starting to notice that your carpet gets pretty bad. How about we replace that? The interesting thing is when the tenant will appreciate that, but not everybody will take you up on it because it's also an inconvenience. They have to move their furniture and there's going to be contractors there for a little while. So not everybody will take you up on it, but at least asking the question, putting it out there will go a long way. You can skip a rent increase. So that goes back to the second slide that I had. A lot of people are not very good in doing annual, they're not very systematized in doing annual rent increases. If you do let them skip a rent increase, you should talk to them about it. And you should say, hey, we really appreciate you being a great tenant. We're increasing rents this year by 2.8%. But because you have been so awesome, we decided to do not a rent increase with you this year. So definitely let them know and not just not communicate with them. Goes back to communication. Update your units, update your curb appeal, update your common areas, make them nice, bright. Get a bucket of paint, get some flooring. Take a look at your parking area. How does that look like? Spend a little bit extra on your lawn. A little fertilizer sometimes goes a long way, a little weed and feed. Those are things that do get noticed. And depending of the nature of your building, where you are on the price scale, you have to, obviously adhere to a certain budget. But you should be spending a portion of your profit, in my opinion, every year strategically on upgrades, and keep up with the condition of the property. Improve it over time and not just do nothing for 10 years and then do a big remodel. You can also increase safety. Depending on what area in Milwaukee you are, safety is oftentimes a big concern when you talk to tenants, and lighting goes a long way. So installing some motion and security lighting can be a really inexpensive addition to your property. It improves the curb appeal. It looks better if it's lit up at night, and it really helps tenants to feel a lot better. And if there are issues, I'm always advocating for resolving them in a very collaborative way. Don't be always confrontational with your tenants. They're not appreciating that, of course. And also if you collaborate with them, you can usually work out a solution that works for everybody. Now, some tips for turnover. So, of course, some factors are outside of our control. People are moving. And so when that happens, I think the first thing that is important to do is to confirm the move out in writing, specifically the date. Oftentimes tenants give you a call or send you a text message to say, hey, we're moving out by the end of December. Not the best time to move out, but you know, if they choose to move out in the end of December, they usually have very legitimate reasons to do so because nobody likes moving in the middle of the winter. Confirm that date with them in writing, so you have a record of that and it's understood. We also send a move out checklist. I think it's important to kind of set the stage. Here are a few things that you should be doing when you're moving out. Some of them are really not because we need them to. They're really more helpful for the tenant. For example, don't forget to cancel your We Energies. Don't forget to forward your mail. Don't forget to set up your internet. All of these things that you want to get done. But of course, we also have a list of things that we need them to do in order to clean up the unit and to get back 100% of their security deposit, which is always our goal. We do not like taking money out of the security deposit, and we communicate that. Set expectations before the final walkthrough. So what we found works really well is to do an informal kind of a pre-walkthrough a few weeks prior when they're moving out and just talking to the tenants about what this process is going to look like and set expectations. Some tenants come with not very good training from their previous landlord, so that they don't know what the expectation is. And setting expectations is always an important part of it. Telling them that you want to have everything moved out, telling them that everything needs to be cleaned. The appliances, yes, also under the stove and behind the stove, refrigerator inside out, replacing light bulbs. We tell tenants, if you don't want to change light bulbs that are not working anymore, it's no problem. We do that. But we charge a contractor rate to replace the light bulbs. And then it comes out of your security deposit. Same for smoke detectors. You might want to do that on your own, put a new battery in there, so we don't have to ding you on the security deposit. Our goal is always to refund 100% of that deposit. Provide a cost breakdown for the remaining tasks. Yeah, that seems to go a long way. If you let people know how much we charge for a light bulb, it motivates them to do it and save that money. And then we found that it's a really good idea to do the final walkthrough in person with the tenant. The reason I like doing that is because there is no dispute about the condition. If there's a big chunk missing out of the hardwood floor in the middle of a bedroom, we're both standing there, we're both looking at it. I'm asking what happened here, and there is a conversation happening. So you avoid that, oh, it wasn't me, that never happened. This is a picture from a different, you just psychologically avoid that altogether if you do the final walkthrough together. I do not tell them, or if I'm not making it, we do not tell them anything definitively about their security deposit. So avoid telling them, yes, we're going to refund 100% until you have had a chance to really inspect the unit in detail. Typically, you're not doing that with your tenant there. Your contractors may find something that has been overlooked, but typically you find all the really big things that really matter. And you should also ask the tenant, is something broken? Let's take a look at it together. So doing that together really goes a long way, and it avoids these legal disputes later on. And then refund the security deposit. If you have to take deductions, send them an itemized security deposit deduction letter where you're listing the things, how much they have been, deducted for. Obviously, we've discussed this at other lunch and learns. You cannot, ding them for normal wear and tear. If the carpet is worn down and dirty, and even if there's a stain in there, don't try to do that. If they challenge you on that, you're not going to win that. So, be really reasonable when you're deducting something from the security deposit. Finally, I have some tips here for faster releasing. So a big portion of your turnover cost is how long will the unit sit vacant. Ideally, you avoid vacancies altogether. You basically have a tenant moving out on the 31st, and you have the new tenant moving in on the 1st. If you're really good at it, you can sometimes even do it on the same day with some proper planning and preparations. What really helps is having professional pictures on file and ready to advertise. So we spent the money. I'm pretty good with my camera, but we actually spent the money on having a professional photographer take the pictures. We have pictures on file, so it's relatively easy for us if we have a turnover coming up. Also exterior pictures. If it's in the 6 months where it doesn't look so great in Wisconsin, it's nice if you have some pretty summer exterior pictures that you can put up there. It looks a lot better than early February. We post a new opening already 2 weeks ahead of the vacancy because we don't want to wait until the unit is vacant. And you can customize that strategy a little bit. This is what works for us. We then decide based on the situation if we're already accommodating showings or not, but we definitely start advertising ahead. The circumstances always change a little bit. If it's a good idea to already do showings, if we do, we try to keep the disturbance to the departing tenant the minimum as possible. So maybe we say, okay, we'll do all the showings on Saturday between 2 and 3 and just get everybody in and out at the same time so we're not constantly bothering the tenant that's moving out. Okay, I just said that. Make sure you have the time for the rehab work, and more importantly, make sure you have your contractors lined up. Nothing is worse than waiting until the tenant has moved out and you know that you, I don't know, need to paint the unit and you haven't even called your painter, and now your painter tells you he's, 4 weeks out. You should have made that phone call already, weeks ahead of time, block the time with your contractor, and you know that from your pre-walkthrough. You already have an idea what needs to be done, so you can, have the resources and the people available when it comes time, and you're not wasting time by letting the unit sitting vacant for a month while you're waiting for your contractors. Be flexible with the new and old tenants. That goes to my approach of being as collaborative as possible. There are a few exceptions. Never sign a lease without security deposit in hand. That's a hard rule that we have. If you're signing a lease, you have entered in a contractual relationship. Do not do that with security deposit in hand. We are usually expecting a cashier's check in order to sign a lease, and we sign and collect the security deposit at the same time. And sometimes that is a month ahead before they're moving in. And then never hand over the keys before you have rent in hand. So these two things sometimes happen at the same time, but they don't need to happen at the same time. If there's a time difference, this can be two separate events, and you get security deposit, sign the lease. A month later, they're moving in. Now they're getting the keys in exchange for another cashier's check for the first month of rent. And then we're setting them up with autopay. That's you.
Hey, Marcus, Dave here.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, I'll turn my video on. I like your proactivity approach. I think I even picked that up from some of your lunch and learns before, being super proactive with expectations with tenants, in starting with even the pre-screening and the applications and then the walkthrough. Did I hear you say that you have either annual or semi-annual type of property inspections or quarterly inspections? Did you say something like that?
Yeah, we do annual and
Okay.
usually in fall. So we're
Okay.
basically making sure we just wrapped up here for this year. We're making sure that everything is ready for winter on the outside. That nobody forgot to leave a garden hose connected to the spigot, that the water is turned off to the outside. We check the gutters, we check the downspout extensions, after the
Okay.
lawn mowing and leaf season is over, just to make sure everything's in good shape. And also on the interior. But I know from other investors that they do it twice a year. And so it really depends on who you're renting to. And so you want to customize it a little bit. It's if you're, yeah, if you're in a rougher area, I imagine it might be good to even do it quarterly, or let's say do one check 3 months after they've moved in, and if it looks pretty good, then schedule the next checkup on them with 6 month or 12 month out. But if they are really trashing up your unit, it's better you know it after 3 months than waiting a full year and find out.
Yeah, good point. Do you put something in your lease or rules and regulations that just say we're going to do an annual? Like I'm going to do quarterly. I'm going to start doing that because I have good tenants in a duplex type of situations. And so I think by doing quarterly, I'm checking furnace filters, smoke alarms, stuff like that. And if I put that up front, then I think that shows them I'm really responsive. 4 times a year, you're going to have somebody walking around, whether not myself or a maintenance guy. But do you just state that, or do you like for your annual thing? Do you put that in your rules and regulations, or just kind of an FYI? This is how we run our property.
Yeah, we state that. It's part of
Okay,
our interview process because when you interview a new tenant, the interview goes really both ways. They're interviewing you as much as you're interviewing them.
yeah,
Especially if you're renting to higher quality tenants, then they're interviewing you maybe more than you're interviewing them.
sure,
And that is part of the conversation. We go over appliances, we go over utilities, we go over their duties and responsibilities. And one of the things that we do is also that we mention the annual inspection. Um, we do not do any modifications to the documents that we get from Wisconsin Legal Blank, so lease, the rules and regulations, and the non-standard lease provisions. Three documents we always use, and there's other ones like lead
yeah,
and a few more things that you have to have, but we never modify any of these documents. And I've never been a big fan of modifying them, and fortunately, because now we found out with the Cobley case that modifying your lease can make it invalid and can cost you a lot of money. So yeah, we don't put it in any of the documents. Comment here, we found if you do 4 times a year, they could consider it harassment or invasion of privacy. For maybe you do 90-day inspection or 100-day inspection after they move in, and then you set them on a 6 or a 12-month schedule after that. And also you can phrase it or present it differently. This is really customer service. We want to make sure that everything in your unit is properly working and functioning. Do you have any questions? Do you have any complaints? Is everything okay? Is there anything you need from us? Uh, that is presenting it in a much different way than saying, "Hey, we come to inspect you." That is certainly perceived differently than if you come and say, "Hey, we just want to make sure everything is working and we don't, there's no repairs that are not attended to." The flip side of that is, or where you want to be careful, is that tenants start making up. If they sense that you are very willing to do things, you have to make sure you're not being taken advantage of. So that's the flip side of that, of being too forthcoming with offering these things. Then and you usually know your specialists that will start having all sorts of demands and ideas of things that you could be doing for them. So then you have to manage that accordingly.